Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to welcome you to a very special podcast on Persona 5, in which we talk about the review. I'm your host, Richard Bailey Jr., and tonight I'm joined by Mr. Jakejames Lugo. How's it going, Mr. Lugo?
I'm doing good, Rich. We got a good game to talk about, and the review just went live, like not even about an hour or so earlier before we actually started talking. So you guys could see the review right now on the website.
Absolutely, absolutely. For those that haven't really seen the review yet, this game has gotten high praise. Mr. Lugo had a lot of very positive things to say about it, so we are going to dive a little bit further into Persona 5 for those that may want to know more about what the game is all about and just to get a better understanding of why this is a game that they need to be playing. So let's start with, let me just ask a few quick questions for those that, that I think a lot of people may have. So my first question right off the bat, Persona 5, I think whenever you hear of a game that's coming out and you hear that this is, it has a sequel, do you think, would you say that people who haven't picked up a Persona game should definitely pick this game up, or do they need to go back and play other Persona games before they get into this game?
Well, that's one of the big parts about not just this game, but also the series. You don't need to play the previous Persona games to jump into 5. That's an awesome thing because like Final Fantasy, or at least in the way that Final Fantasy used to be a while back, every single game is its separate story. It's its own like kind of condensed and kind of, self-contained story with its own characters, its own plot, its own narrative, its own themes and stuff. And Persona 5, while it has some similar themes and similar aesthetic choices and visuals to Persona 3 and Persona 4, it is still its own separate type of entity. It's its own separate game. So I believe, in my opinion, this is the game that you should jump into. If you've never played a Persona game before, this is the game to dive into it for the first time around. Because I know people that have never played a Persona game that have dived into this recently, and they say that this makes them, when they're done with this, want to go back to play Persona 3 and 4.
All right, so the people that you describe, I believe I'm about to be one of these people because, yes, I have picked up my copy of Persona 5 earlier tonight. I haven't played it yet. I hope to talk about it on the co-op tomorrow. But yeah, that's great to hear because I know a lot of times when people hear about a sequel, they're like, well, do I need to go back and play the original? But this is good to hear that this is a great starting point for those that are new to the series. So let's go ahead and let's get into a couple of deeper questions. So now, for those that, if maybe you haven't seen it yet or you are going to see it, yes, Mr. Lugo did score the game a 100.
Yep, first 100 I've ever scored.
Yeah, see, that's a big deal. I just want to clarify, though, for those that may wonder, 100 score is, I believe that is the highest recommendation. It does not mean the game is perfect, but it means that it's
incredible, is what it means. It's there's no such thing as a perfect game, and people really need to understand that, not just with our scoring system, but with any scoring system that's out there on any website that you read. It just means that the game is incredibly highly recommended.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know we don't have too many of those games. There was one game that did come close to getting that score. That was the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt by Mr. Anthony Nash. But yeah, I've heard a lot about this game even before your review was finished. And I definitely believe that the game is worthy of the high score. But maybe you can tell us just first and foremost, based upon all the other games that we have seen so far, I believe you and I had a discussion where you told me that this game is, without a doubt, it has to be at the very top of the list, even more so than Horizon Zero Dawn. So can you please describe in detail why you make that particular statement?
The reason why I say that, it has nothing to do with comparing the two games because they're entirely different genres. The only similarities that they do have is that they're both games that allow you to explore a wide area. That's one of the big things about Horizon Zero Dawn, especially because it has such a wide open area that you could explore. That's a little bit more freeform. You could go to a lot more areas and explore more of the environment than what you could in Persona. But for me, what makes Persona kind of work well together, as a total package, is that every area in Persona, even though you start off small and you kind of start going to other areas that are a little bit more open, even though they're self-contained, is that everything has a personality. Everything has some sort of kind of, theme, or everything has a certain type of aura and kind of, allure to it. For example, exploring the streets of Tokyo, or basically, a different part of Shibuya, Japan, that even though you only go within a couple maps that are included in the area, you're not only constantly visiting those areas, even the most like inane spots that aren't really important to the main story, but like they have some sort of significance later on, you're still going back to them, and everything that you do feels special. Compare that to something like Horizon, which again, phenomenal game in its own right. I'm still playing Horizon Zero Dawn even now. And I think I even told you that when I was still reviewing Persona, that it's still a phenomenal game in its own right. But if you remember, one thing that you don't really get from Horizon as much is that you don't really remember the environments themselves. You don't really kind of latch on to the areas that you're exploring and the different types of stages and levels that you go to as much as you probably would with Persona 5. At least that's how I felt spending a significant amount of time with both games. With Persona, I always felt like not only was the music bumping, the aesthetic, the visual aesthetic was really looking really good. Everything just works so well together. And while Horizon Zero Dawn, or at least, that is an example, we're kind of picking on it a little bit now, but with Horizon being as good as it is, I felt like between the two games, Persona's environments and Persona's places that you go to that are related to the story or not related to the story had a little bit more of that oomph that really worked well together with everything that was included with the game.
Yeah, I understand what you mean exactly. Yeah, I mean, I picked up Horizon as well. I haven't had a chance to play Horizons. Just there's too many games out right now, so I have to make time to play that. But I know Horizon definitely deserves some recognition. But this game, though, I've heard nothing but high praise for the game. I heard the game is very polished, and that is one thing that I think a lot of people have said a lot about, because a lot of games that do come out right now, obviously they have the day one patches. Like take a game like Mass Effect, for example. This is a game that had a couple of issues. Now, there was a patch released on Thursday to address a couple of the animations, so on and so forth. So to know that there's a game that comes out and it's just polished, it looks great, is a good thing, because I believe that this game took a while to get completed in the first place. So glad to hear that the time was well spent and that the presentation and everything about it is very captivating. So one question I did want to ask now, because I know that with this particular game, because we say it's the best JRPG of 2017 thus far.
Without question, straight up. I mean, right now, like with all the games, because we've had a lot of games come out now. Like we had games like Nier Automata, or Nier Automata, I keep pronouncing it wrong. Nier Automata. We've had games like Horizon come out. We've had obviously Mass Effect. We've had Ukulele come out. I mean, there's been a lot of really good to decently good or phenomenal games that have been released just in the first few months of 2017. And right now, for me, Persona 5 blows them out the water, without question.
So this is my question. Because yes, it is the best, as you said. It is a JRPG. So now let me ask this question: for someone that is coming into this game, let's say they've never played a JRPG before, would you be able to describe exactly what they can expect from this type of a game? Maybe hard to really explain, but just explain what a JRPG is and why this is a successful JRPG.
There's nothing really that different other than certain priorities over another between a Western RPG and a JRPG. I mean, a lot of people latch on to JRPGs because not only, them being developed in Japan, or they have a lot of Japanese qualities to them, or at least a lot of emphasis on Japanese philosophy or Japanese values and stuff, compared to Western RPGs, which are a little bit more fantasy oriented. They're a little bit more sci-fi. They tend to be a little bit much more gung-ho compared to the Japanese RPGs. Again, it's a very minute comparison, but for all extensive purposes, a lot of the characteristics between two genres are pretty much the same, with different types of stuff that you can latch onto one side or the other. Now, with Persona 5 doesn't do anything innovative. It doesn't do anything where it changes up the genre or changes up the landscape of what a JRPG is. It just does what a JRPG is supposed to do so very well. And then everything that's put together, like I mentioned before, between the visuals, between the music, between the story, between the characters, between the gameplay, between the extras, and the time investment, which is really the value that you get out of it, all 7 of those aspects of it work well in such an awesome, phenomenal way. That's why it makes it not only just a great JRPG and a great role-playing game at that, but it makes it a phenomenal game just as a whole, because you want not only a game that could give you a lot of value, spend a lot of time with it, and enjoy every single moment that you spend with that game. One of the things that I could say about a lot of the games that come out in 2017 is that while some of them are good and some of them you spend a lot of time with, you can't say that for a lot of those games, if not for many games in general, that you enjoy or get something out of almost every moment that you're spending time with that game. Even for some of the most critically acclaimed games out there, there's always these ebbs and flows between the momentum, between the fun factor, between the hype, between the intensity, you know, the storytelling, all these different factors that come into play. And it's different for every single game. But with Persona 5, I always felt like even the most mundane stuff and the stuff that you don't think is that important feels special. And it feels interesting, it feels gravitating, and it feels like, you know, that's special because not only is it you going through that experience, but like everything around it makes it feel special like that. You don't get that from a lot of games.
Absolutely. And I would also imagine that because it does feel special, there's a lot of things that are also memorable about this game that you will come back to at the end of the year and think, yeah, this was definitely a standout title because of these certain things that it did.
Exactly. And the thing is that there's a lot of those moments in Persona 5 dealing with the different characters you run into, some of the different story elements. Now, one thing I will say is that I'm not going to be too spoiler heavy. And one of the good things about my review is that it's not filled with spoilers like that. I mean, there is some allusions to some of the plot points, but nothing where it's going to spoil the game for you. And I think it's very hard to spoil a lot of the stuff in this game without actually watching a playthrough because there's so much that goes on. But even with all that stuff that's happening, it might sound overwhelming at first, but it's really not when you're going through the experience. One of the things that somebody was telling me recently after I posted on my review is that they felt like a little bit of both the visuals and some of the stuff that you normally do, like in a JRPG, would be overwhelming for them because you have to spend so much time with it. JRPGs could get sometimes as high like 30, 40, 50 plus hours, depending on the game that it's out there. I just reviewed the Kingdom Hearts collection not too long ago, and all those games, like there's about 6 titles included. 4 of those games are full games, and you could get at least easily 30 plus hours between all of them. You know, JRPGs could, you know, because of the nature of the genre, you spend a long time with them. But what really separates the good ones from the bad ones is how much you're willing to put that time in and how much you're willing to stay with it and how much you're enjoying every single moment along the way.
Oh yeah, you know, and again, you know, with the way that the game is handled, there are certain hooks in it that will get people, you know, have people coming back for more. I know you described to me multiple times that, you know, while playing all these other games you had to review, you kept coming back to Persona 5. So
yeah, that was a problem, and that I mean, it was a good problem to have. And I remember telling you because there's a couple other games along at the same time that I was reviewing with Persona 5, and just the way that Persona 5 is just designed, the way that everything's handled, and the quality and the level of detail. I want to really stress that the level of minute detail that went into a lot of different aspects that you wouldn't think that would be given a lot of detail shine. And that's very rare to find in a lot of games, even in some of the biggest AAA games out there. I mean, you could say what you want about Horizon. You could say what you want about Uncharted. You could even say what you want about Overwatch and stuff. But I do not think that they have the same level of minute detail put into small things like the menus with Persona 5. The menus just look good. They just look phenomenal, pleasing to the eye. And they have little things like little animations that pop up as you transition between the menus. It's like you don't get that from a lot of games. And it's just that level of quality or that level of effort that went into stuff like that that just makes the entire experience just that much more fun to be a part of.
I got you. Yeah, see, so many great things said about this game, you know, and I know I cannot wait to play it. It's going to be very difficult because there's a lot of games that I should be playing, but this is one I'm definitely going to make time to check out.
This is probably the second must-play game that came out for me this year because the first one was Horizon. I still think that everybody should play Horizon like that, but I also feel like everybody needs to play Persona 5. And even if you're not a JRPG fanatic, if you're not someone that really likes anime per se, and I have to say, and I even mentioned it in the review towards the end, that there are some archetypes from, you know, anime that do kind of resurface. It's just the nature of the genre and the nature of just the visual style and the nature of the storytelling that's coming out of Japan. It's kind of almost unavoidable in some instances, but it doesn't do anything to really harken down the experience or really kind of ruin it or make it so everything else just becomes obsolete. And that's, again, another rare feat about this game that you don't find in a lot of other games because people will get hung up on one thing or another whenever they're playing a game, especially a long game like an RPG or any other type of like Western or JRPG that's out there. But for any of the faults that I found, it was very hard to find stuff that's wrong with Persona 5. Some of the stuff that I noticed from a lot of other people that they were talking about that I acknowledged but didn't really have too much of an issue with, stuff with the camera, especially like when you're running around some of the different environments. They have these things called palaces, which are the different areas you go to in relation to the plot points of the story that you could explore. And the way they're designed aesthetically and the way that gameplay wise, you could move around and explore different areas, kind of like a traditional JRPG dungeon. I tongue twisted there. As well as also just exploring some of the different like procedurally generated stuff in one of the areas of the game called Mementos. Just all that stuff just, again, works super, super well together. It's just there's so many things that are just outweigh anything that's like negative about this game in a very, very positive way. It's very hard to find something inherently wrong with Persona 5, and that's an awesome problem to have.
I agree, indeed. Very, 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 very good problem to have. So, man, I mean, I really don't have any questions to ask. I know we don't want to get too heavy into the spoiler territory. We may do that again because I know Gary is playing the game as well. So we may have to have another podcast at a later time to talk about some of the story.
One thing I can mention though that I touched upon in my review and I think should be spotlighted because again it goes along with everything that I was just saying, that it complements everything. The soundtrack, and I really believe right now Persona 5 has the best soundtrack of 2017 of any game, hands down. It is awesome. They have some phenomenal music in there, song pieces, phenomenal scores, phenomenal background music. Everything just, again, works so good together with the visuals, with the events happening on screen, with the plot points. Everything is just so interwoven nicely that just the music is just like the extra icing on the cake that just makes everything that much more better. I feel like it's funny because I played the previous Persona games and I get the soundtracks for all the Persona games that I play because they're just that good. But right now, like I feel like at least for what's come out this year thus far, Persona 5 is the best game soundtrack that's come out.
All right, now you say that, I definitely need to check it out because I'm enjoying Nier, and the soundtrack in Nier is.
And
awesome.
Remember, I said that exactly about Nier not so long ago, and I spent a lot of time with Nier. Nier has an awesome soundtrack, yes. But I really believe that Persona 5 blows it out the water, and that's not a knock against Nier because Nier, again, from Square Enix and Platinum Games, awesome game in its own right. I think it did a lot of good coming out this year, especially in the time frame that it came out. And the music with that, the vocals, the background music, even in combat and stuff is really awesome. But you take all of that level of quality and then you just up it to like 11 with Persona 5 because the one thing that I mentioned in the review that I will say that sums it up really nicely, there's a bunch of tracks that you will hear over and over and over again, and you will not get tired of them. There has to be a couple tracks in there that I've heard over 30 times right now between like the battle soundtrack, the battle music, like with any RPG, or like the walking around soundtrack when you're just going from environment or stage to stage. I probably heard those so many times and I'm still not tired of them. They just sound that good and they just work well with what you're doing. Like you could be going to visit a character or the most stupidest, most like boring thing you could think of in the game, which is like taking some of your items to go do laundry. Like, this is no joke. I'm dead serious. You could actually take some items that you find in some of the places that you could explore and go do laundry. And just the music is just like one of those things. It's like, it works so well. Like, it's pulled straight out of an anime episode. And just some of the conversations, the banter between the characters that you're seeing on screen, everything just works so well. And you don't even think about it. Like, you've heard the same track like 40 times. And it's like, it doesn't bother you. You want to hear it again. It's really funny like that.
Yeah, see, that sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. Well, I will say this, I think that, I think I've been pretty open about this in the past. I haven't really played too many Japanese games. So one of my goals this year was to actually do more of that. I did play Gravity Rush 2. I enjoyed that game. I'm enjoying Nier, and this sounds like another game that I'm absolutely going to enjoy playing. I have to jump on it immediately. So I'm definitely glad. I would say, as someone who hasn't yet played Persona 5, yes, I have it sitting here right next to me right now. I will try it out tonight so I can talk about it on the co-op tomorrow. But I will definitely
I'd be interested to see what you have to say about it, honestly. I'm super curious, like, what you would have to say about it, because especially someone that's never played it before, like that. And it also, since you don't play a lot of traditional Japanese role-playing games like that, you played a lot of like Mass Effect and The Witcher and other Western RPGs. It'd be good to get your perspective on like how good this game is, if you really believe that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like you said, you told me before we started recording, take maybe about 3 or 4 hours to try out the game. So I will do that, and I'll definitely talk more in depth about that tomorrow. Because I still do have tonight to play. So, but I did want to say for those that they may be on the fence about trying something new. As I said before, this year I just started playing a lot of different Japanese games, and I'd say, well, I'm probably not going to play that, and then I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. So I would definitely say, if you're interested in trying new things, you should try new things. Don't hold yourself back, because you may be learning something that you actually enjoy.
And here's another thing I want to mention too, to kind of offshoot from that. Just go with the flow with Persona 5. That's when it's at its best. Like, there's a lot of different things that I'm pretty sure people will get hung up on here and there. Like any other game that gets released, or any game that gets criticized or scrutinized for what it is or what it presents. We've seen that already with a couple of games that have come out this year. But if you roll with it, just go in, like you said, with an open mind, just roll with it, and just see and go along with what's happening on screen and such, you are going to have that much more of a fun time going through the story. And I'm telling you right now, this is not something you're going to complete within a weekend. It's not. I don't even think this is something you could complete within a week, because I'm still playing it now. Like, I'm super deep into it, like over the 40-hour mark at points, or 40 or 50-hour mark, and like I'm still like playing a whole bunch of stuff that just like, that is even more testament to how good this game is. I'm talking about it in the way that I'm talking about it, or writing about it the way that I'm writing about it, and I'm 50 plus hours almost into it, and I'm still got so much more left to go, and I want to experience even more of it. And that's the same sentiment I see from a lot of other people.
Now, I did want to ask a quick question. I have to ask this question. Now, I know that Atlus released a statement not too long ago that just, I guess, informing people not to stream once they get later into the game, because I guess they want to avoid potential spoilers. So I wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts on whether or not that is a good strategy, because I think some people have complained about that. I think if it's, I know a lot of people tend to spoil a lot of things these days, so I don't see a problem with them saying, okay, for a certain period of time, but I don't know all the details. Tell us more about this, what they said, and whether or not you think it's a good thing.
Well, the funny thing is that it's not really a testament to the quality of the game, number one. Number two, it's very stupid, because it's a very old school Japanese mindset to this thing. It's very Nintendo-esque. Nintendo has the same problem, and Nintendo gets criticized for the exact same thing. The problem is, it's not Atlus of America. I mean, Atlus is traditionally a Japanese company. It's the execs over there that believe, and because in Japan, spoilers is a very big thing. It's a very big no-no for the culture that works over there. So they approach it in the same way, because they are a Japanese company based off of their area. But for here us in the States, and also worldwide, like, we don't care as much. Like, a lot of the people that are already looking at videos like that, they don't care if they get spoiled or not. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. What I think makes it even worse, or at least gives it even more of a bad taste in everybody's mouth, is the fact that it's after the release of the game, after it's the release worldwide. And at that point, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. You shouldn't put restrictions on what the content of the game is, especially if it's been out already for a long time in Japan. Remember, Persona 5 came out in Japan for like almost a whole month prior to us getting it here in the States. So it should be fair game at this point, because now it's out for everybody. The problem is, though, I don't think a lot of the Japanese execs, for a lot of big popular game companies, have really figured out the culture, really figured out how to make it work. Some have, I will admit. I think companies like Square Enix are kind of getting a good grasp on it, and a few others here and there. I believe also Capcom could be another one. You could say, you could pull out any other Japanese developer that you could hear like no problems with streaming and stuff. But I don't think the bulk of them, or at least everybody, has really jumped on board with that. I think that that's going to come with time. That'll probably come with a few more people that are working over there that have an understanding about streaming culture, about Let's Plays and stuff, that really kind of inform them and really kind of show them that this is not a bad thing. That Let's Plays and streaming could do nothing but help a game, especially if it's good. And for me, I feel like if Persona 5 didn't have any of that stuff, it'd be getting even more positive attention than what it did now. I think by doing this, and preventing people or being so harsh. And it wasn't even the fact that they didn't ask people to do it. They threatened to give copyright strikes, or at least insinuated that they would give copyright strikes against channels and Twitch streams that did stream past, I think it's July 7th in the game, which is 7/7, and as far as the calendar in the game and game time. But if they did that, they would get copyright strikes, and to me, that's not a good idea. That it's one thing to ask them, and I think that the greater community, both streaming and just the gaming community in general, would have been like, okay, whatever. There still would be people that are doing that, but for now, you know, the way that they kind of worded it and stuff, it was to their disadvantage. I don't think they approached it as good.
Yeah, well, when you put it that way, yeah, I have to agree with that. And yeah, it has been out in Japan for a while, so it's a little bit of a, yeah, I don't really understand that decision, but I mean, it's still getting back to the main point. I'm glad to hear that the game is great. I've seen nothing but positive things on this game, so
I don't think that in itself like really hurts the game though, especially the reception. I think it hurts. It gets a little bit of bad word of mouth around it, and it's more about the company than anything else, because I think people truly want to talk about Persona 5 and they truly want to stream it. Yeah. I saw a lot of people that were very disappointed on Twitter and Facebook talking about how they wanted to stream the game, but this seems like Atlus doesn't want them to stream it. And I think Atlus was kind of clear about it being from the Japanese execs, you know, from the home country, actually talking about why this is a bad thing. So I'm pretty sure if Atlus here in the West had their way, they wouldn't care. They let everybody stream it. So I don't think it should reflect bad on the game, but you should be vocal to the company and be like, hey, listen, we want to talk about your games and we don't care about spoilers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, you know, being vocal, that will only help them sell more copies and get more people interested into it that otherwise wouldn't be. So absolutely right about that. But, yeah, so many different things said about Persona 5. So I wanted to ask you if you had any other things you wanted to say about the game that you may not have already said.
Again, I just think that it's stylishly incredible. Like I said in the review, it is probably the best game to come out this year thus far. I know a lot of people are going to give it to stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn, and again, like I mentioned, all those other games, great in their own right and stuff. But I feel like this is the game that really is the pinnacle of not only the genre that it's a part of, but has really hit that kind of like, you know, that apex for 2017 thus far. We still got a lot of other games coming out for the rest of the year. A lot of people are latching onto stuff like Zelda. A lot of people are latching onto stuff like Horizon. We still got Injustice around the corner. We've got games like Mario Odyssey later in the year. And there's other games that are going to be coming out at various different times. But for right now, I think like this is the creme de la creme of 2017 thus far, and deservedly so. So I really truly believe everybody should be playing Persona 5. When they get a chance, if you haven't played it or dived into it yet, you should plan to do so, because you'd be doing yourself an injustice not to do so.
Absolutely. And for those that are going to be checking out the co-op tomorrow, you know, we actually may be announcing a giveaway related to Persona 5. So you definitely should check out the show tomorrow to get some more details on that. But yeah, as Mr. Lugo said, it is worth playing. And as I've already said, I plan on playing it tonight. So I will let you know what I think about the game on tomorrow's co-op for sure. But I think that is pretty much it for our review discussion. Unless you had anything else you wanted to say, Mr. Lugo, and any shout outs you would like to give, please feel free to do so.
Just shout out to everybody that reads the review. Check it out. Again, it's already on the site right now if you haven't seen it. If you're watching this later and you're not watching it live, besides the discussion, we highly recommend that you read the review. Again, it's long. I know it was like 1,000 some words by the time I was done. I had to condense everything, but there was a lot to unpack. There was a lot to touch on, and it's a great review. I really believe this is the best game of 2017 for me thus far, and you really need to check it out. You really need to check out the reviews, compare, contrast, and just check out the game when you can. You check it out on PlayStation 4. I know it's available on PS3. I don't think it's available on PS3 here in the States. I think it was only available on PS3 in Japan. So I think you could only get it on PS4 right now. But again, well worth it. Well worth diving into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yes, that concludes our show for this evening. And we hope that you all have a great evening. And we will talk to you all tomorrow on Co-op 201. So have a good evening. We'll talk to you later.
See you guys later.